If you want to delve into the wonderful world of Python programming, which is becoming one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing language on the planet today, but you don't know where to start, I'm here to help you out. Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. If you haven't already, please click down to the subscribe button so that I can keep you updated on some of the really cool things that you can do with Python and educate you on how to use it as well. So I've been reading a lot of the comments on Facebook and some other social networks as well. And it sounds like there's a lot of people out there that are still having problems on how to set up Python. So some of them don't even know how to install it, or some people don't know what IDE to use. Some people are fumbling over the terminal, and this is perfectly normal. So don't feel discouraged about it at all, because everybody at the start is going to go through this pain point, so to speak. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the Mac. I'm going to show you step by step how to install Python. I'm going to walk through something called a virtual environment, which is really good for you guys to learn early on. It builds good habits. I've made some mistakes where I haven't actually installed some of my code in virtual environments, and then it's kind of sacrificed or it's kind of messed up other programs that I made as well. So I'm going to teach you about that as well, what a virtual environment is, how to set it up, how to set up pip, which hosts all the different Python packages. And finally, then we're going to go over some IDEs. Now, IDE is called an integrated development environment, and what that is that's a place where you can go and start coding with Python. There's a few different ways to do it. You can go directly into the terminal, which I'll walk you through, but you can also download some really good IDEs, and I'm going to go over two of my favorite IDEs as well. So if you're in, let's go. All right guys, so let's get started here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to sort of go through a bit of an agenda on what I want to cover off today. And this is going to be quite comprehensive for people that are just starting out, and that's why that's what I want to do basically. So in today's agenda, what I want to do is I want to install Python and make sure that we all have Python installed in our environment. We're going to confirm together, what the installation is and what version you've got. Generally, pip is installed with Python, but for whatever reason, if it's not, we can look at that as well. Then I'm going to introduce you to something called a virtual environment, and this is really important when you're starting to especially get into different application type development scenarios, and also when you want to tinker with different packages. So having a virtual environment is key, and I'll explain what that is in a second. We're going to check the version of the virtual environment. We're going to make a virtual environment together. We're going to open the terminal and we're going to install some packages just to play around with. We're also going to code a little bit in terminal just to show you that is a very lightweight way to start. So you don't have to install a lot of things. You can get started in terminal, but it's obviously not going to be as good as something like when we talk about Jupyter Notebooks or PyCharm, which are two of my favorite IDEs. And when I do a lot of the training on this channel, you'll see me sort of switching between the two. So for Jupyter Notebooks, I like using that because it's easier for me to teach people. It's just, I find a little bit more easier to learn off of, where PyCharm is, what I would say more of a development environment, where I'm actually going to develop my hardcore applications. And so I'll use PyCharm for that, but I'll switch between the two because I want you guys to get familiarized with both. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check out some of the other videos and you'll see that I'm switching between the two. All right, so first things first, let's get started with installing Python. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our terminal here. Okay, so I've already got Python installed, but we're going to go through some of the instructions here. So the latest version I'm on Mac OS is 3.7. And so if you just click on that, it will take you to a download, and you can go ahead and download that and install it. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can go to something called Anaconda. And Anaconda is a really good platform as well. I personally don't use it, but it is really good as well. And what you can do with this is when you install it, you will get a lot of the packages that are typically used already pre-installed with Anaconda. So you can just go ahead and download that and install that for your machine. So that will work as well. And then the last way to install it is you just go Python install terminal, and you can get instructions on how to do it, whether this is going to be your Mac, whether it's going to be PC or whatever it is. But there's instructions on how to do that as well. So you just click there. Now, the one thing I will tell you is Python 2.7 is going to be deprecated this year, so don't bother installing it. There's really no point. But if you're on a Mac, you can always use brew. So you can do something like brew install Python 3, which I've done as well, and that works fine. And If you want to specify a specific version, you can always go ahead and say brew install Python 3 / and then the version number as well. So you can pick that. But right now, I believe the latest one is 3.73, which I believe we saw here. 3.73 is the latest. They do have Python 3.8 out, but that's for beta users. So if you're not an advanced user, I would suggest you do not install that. Okay. So once you've installed that, then we're going to go ahead back to terminal, and we're going to see what version it is. So to do that, you just type in Python hyphen version, or capital V, and it'll tell you that you have Python 3.7.3 installed. So that checks off point number 1 on what we wanted to get accomplished. All right, so we've already checked off number 1, which is done. So we've confirmed, or we've installed Python, and we've confirmed the installation and the version number as well. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and confirm whether or not we have pip. So we're just going to go pip hyphen V. I think it's capital V, sorry. And so it's going to tell me I have pip 19.0.3 installed. And so the way pip works is you would just write pip install, and then you can go on pip's website, which is pypy.org. And you can search for whatever types of projects you want. So if I wanted to go to NumPy, for example, and I search for it, it would actually tell me how to install it. So it's just pip install NumPy. So it's really that simple. So the one thing we want to make sure when we do this is we want to check to see whether or not pip is the latest version or not. So pip install upgrade pip. And so when you want to upgrade something, you would do the pip install, which is standard, and then the command upgrade pip. And so now it's going to go ahead and see, all right, so it's installing 19.0.3 and it's installed 19.1.1. So it's good that I did this. So you guys actually saw how I upgraded pip. All right, so we've taken care of that. The next thing I want to do is I want to install my virtual environment. And so before I do that, let me just explain to you what the virtual environment does. So picture yourself having a computer where we've gone ahead and we've installed, we've installed Python on your computer. We've installed pip and a few other things. If we choose to install more packages, that's great. All right. But the problem is right now this is Python 3.7 and then this was pip 19.1. All right. So as you develop applications, one of the things you want to do is you want to isolate the environment. So the best way to do that is to actually take a bit of memory and create another sort of what we would call a virtual environment, which sort of takes up memory in your computer. And in this, you would go ahead and install Python, pip, and a whole bunch of other packages. The difference being is that sometimes when you're doing application development, you will find that when you install multiple packages together and you're trying to get them to work, they work with a specific version number. So let's say I installed, and I'm making this up, but let's say I installed, NumPy. I don't even know what the version is, so let's just call it version 1. And let's say I also installed, pandas. And let's just call this version 2. We can check what version it is later. Now let's just say that we've developed an application that requires both of these versions to work together. The minute I go to my main computer and I upgrade pandas to version 3, it may conflict with NumPy version 1. It may come back and say, wait a minute, I'm not compatible with version 3. I can only use version 2. And so what you want to do in a scenario like that is you want to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to create a separate environment where I can put whatever version numbers I have in there. So I can create version 1 here, I can create version 2 here. And every single time I develop a new application, I can go ahead and deploy a new virtual environment. And so this virtual environment is going to be independent of this virtual environment, which will be independent of your main system as well. And I know this is kind of looking messy, but the whole point of this is you want to create an environment where you are not interrupting specific things. So you can have a virtual environment here for app 1 with all the packages that are compatible in app 1. You can have a virtual environment for app 2, and then you can have your main computer here with its own version numbers. Version 3, this is version 2, this is version 1, and then you're not disrupting anything. And then eventually what you can do is you can say, all right, let me create maybe a mirror container here, and try versioning with the different new versions and see if it's compatible or not. And this way you haven't interrupted anything and your code is going to always run because you know that the packages are compatible with one another. So that in a nutshell is why we would set up a virtual environment, and we're going to show you how to do that as well. But let me show you how to install it first. So let's bring Chrome back up here, and actually I need terminal. So when I go to terminal, so let's clear this out here. When I go to terminal, I'm just gonna copy in pip install virtual env. And so I forgot the A here. And so I've already got it installed. So it says requirement already satisfied, so I'm good to go. But you guys may need to do it. So now we're going to use a little bit of terminal because that's a really good way to start playing around with this stuff and creating a new virtual environment. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. And let me bring up virtual env in here anyway so that we can follow so I'm bringing it up so that we can follow what their instructions are, how to use this. And it's really nicely laid out. I mean, if you go to installation, they'll tell you how to install it. They'll give you some examples somewhere down along here, but we're going to go over one anyways. So let's bring up terminal. Okay, let's clear this out. All right, so I just switched over to my coding file directory that I generally use for all of these things. So I'm just gonna make a new directory. I'm gonna say mkdir. That means make new directory, and we're just gonna say, virtual tutorial. So we're gonna put all of our stuff in here. So I'm gonna just change into virtual and put a star because I don't want to type everything out. And so you'll see the directory is empty right now. So what we're gonna first do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna create our virtual environment. All right, so to do that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna type virtual env, and then we're gonna call whatever folder. So let's just call it my code. So that's gonna be the directory that we're gonna create. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna go ahead and install versions of Python into this. And so it's done now. So when I hit ls against it, it's gonna say, all right, my code is there. Now we're not gonna just command change into this, we have to activate this. But if I were to just show you, I'll show you that there's some stuff in here. And the stuff is going to be used to activate the virtual environment. But we're going to go back and let me show you how to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and type in source, which is a standard command, and then you're going to call your directory or call your virtual environment called my code, and then you're going to go bin activate. Now let me tell you another thing. I'm showing you the right way to do this, and many experienced coders will tell you, many experienced developers will tell you this is the right way to do it. I have an entire team of developers who use this method. Now, creating a virtual environment is not necessary, it's just a best practice when you're starting something out. So if you want to skip the virtual environment piece and go directly into when I start coding in Python, or coding in the terminal, you can do that as well. But I'm teaching you best practice here. Okay, so now our virtual environment is activated. All right, so this means that if you look here, before it just had my name and it had my MacBook and it said, this is the directory I was in. Now it's actually saying, hey, listen, you're in a virtual environment, so you can do whatever you want. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and open a new terminal window. And when you look at this, you'll see that in one scenario, I'm in my virtual environment, and in this case, I'm not. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the fact that there are certain modules that are installed in my regular environment, but in my virtual environment, it's a blank slate, which is what we want. So here, if I just type in Python to activate it, so we're going to do a little bit of coding now in terminal. So to start Python, all you have to do is write Python in terminal, and then you'll see that you have this little prompt here. So that's your Python prompt. I'm going to do the same thing in my virtual environment, and I have the same prompt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to import pandas. And if you see in my videos, you'll notice that I love using pandas. It's one of my favorite libraries. And so it imports it, no problem. And then I can do something like pd._version_. And that'll tell me that I have 0.24.2 installed. Now let's see what happens in my virtual environment here. So when I go ahead and I do import pandas, it actually says no module found. And that's exactly what we want. This is supposed to be my blank slate. I can go in here and install whatever I want. So let's just say I wanted to install a different version of pandas. So So I just cleared that. So now we're gonna go ahead and install. So we're gonna do pip install pandas, and I'm gonna purposely install an older version. So let's go 0.20.0 or 24.0, sorry. Oh, and I meant double equal sign there. And so what it's going to do is it's going to install an older version of pandas. And the beauty of this is if I know that in this specific application that I'm developing, it'll only work with 0.2.40, it doesn't disturb my regular environment, which is why you want to put these things in virtual environments. So now if I go back to Python here and I say import pandas, it's going to recognize it, which is great. And then I can do pd dot underscore version underscore. Oops, I forgot to say as PD. And then I can run that command, and now it'll actually say that I'm at 0.24.0, whereas my main computer is at 0.24.2. So that's the benefit of putting these in virtual environments. So let's get out of this. And now let's actually do some coding in our virtual environment. So I'm gonna get rid of this. We don't need it anymore. All right, so just to go back here, we've installed Python, we've confirmed the installation and version, we've confirmed we have pip, we've installed a virtual environment. We didn't check the version, but we can do that. But we know it's working because we created a directory. And then we've also installed pandas, a specific version. So now let's do a little bit of coding for fun in the terminal, and then I'll show you some of the other IDEs. So before I go ahead and do anything further, I don't like clutter, so let's get rid of that. So now remember, I'm in my virtual environment, and I would just, to start Python, you just do this. And now I can do whatever I want here. I can do something like import math, so I can import the math library, and then I can say something like x is equal to math dot, and I'm gonna put in the square root function or the method and 25. So all I'm saying here is I've imported the math library. I say, you know, math dot square root. So I'm saying what's a square root of 25 essentially. So let's do that, and then we're gonna go ahead and print x. Okay, so x is 5, which we hopefully know from math is true. So that's how you would start doing things in terminal. So it's a good way to get started. I can do something like print, you know, the good old hello world. And then now you're basically running stuff in Python. The challenge with this is it's in terminal. So it's hard to always follow, because if you need to clear your screen or things get cluttered, it's kind of hard to program in it. So I mean, I'll use it if I just need to test something out very quickly, but other than that, I generally don't use terminal. So now I'm going to show you how to install Jupyter Notebooks, which is one of my preferred tools. So let me bring up Jupyter Notebooks, and we can bring it up in the virtual environment too. So I can just say, first I have to install it, pip install, I think it's just Jupyter, it should be, yeah. So it's going to go ahead and install Jupyter Notebooks independent of my computer. So I already have it on my computer, but I wanted to bring it in the virtual environment so that it's separated from everything. All right, so it's going to go through the installation process, and now it's done. And to open it, all we do is we type in Jupyter Notebook. So now what it's going to do is it's going to, in a virtual environment, bring up my code, which is our virtual environment. And I can go in here and I can start a new Python 3 file. All right, so we can do the same thing here. Import pandas as PD, or import math. I can say something like as m. So then this way, when I'm running it below, I can just say x is equal to m dot square root, and then just put in 25. And then here I can just say print x, and you get 5. The nice thing about pandas is it's a great way to visualize things as well. So you can even do a lot of visual mapping in this, which you can't really do in terminal. You can even put things like instructions in here. So I can say something like, this is where my code is going to go. And then you go up to code, select markdown, run this, and now this actually becomes a comment. So you can put, you know, different sections. So this isn't supposed to be a Jupyter Notebooks tutorial, but more so helping you understand how to set this up. So that was Jupyter Notebooks. So now we're going to go back to our terminal, or we actually don't have to go back to our terminal. We're going to go to JetBrains, I believe that's, yep, we're gonna leave. All right, so JetBrains has something called PyCharm. Now PyCharm is probably easier if I just go into Google and type in PyCharm. So let's just do that, all right? Unless I go to tools maybe. So if I go to tools, I go down to PyCharm, it's there, or you can just go to Google and do it. So PyCharm is an IDE. So, you know, I would say it's probably for some of the more advanced users, but at the same time, a beginner can use it, no problem. When you download it, there's two different versions. There's a professional version, which I believe is paid, and there's a community version, which is free. And that's the one I use anyway. So I'm going to bring up PyCharm and show you the same thing. Now, the one good thing about PyCharm is PyCharm will automatically bring or create its own virtual environment. So you actually don't have to go through the hassle of creating a virtual environment. But we're going to open this up. And I'm going to have a whole bunch of random code here, which you don't have to worry about. So let me just get rid of all this stuff here. But in order to just start a new project, you would have your project here. And so these are all your project files. To start a new file, to start a new script, you just go to new scratch file, and you can pick different types of coding languages, which is why PyCharm is so good. But you can scroll down, pick Python, and then do the same thing here. You can do import math, and then you can say math as m, and then you can say x is equal to m dot square root 25, and then do print x. And let me just make this a little bit bigger. So you can do this in PyCharm as well. So I just renamed it to something else. You can just run it, and then it'll give you the answer 5 right down here. Let me zoom into that as well. So that is in a nutshell how you would get started with Python, the different types of environments, the different files you need to install. Like I said, if you continue following to watch my videos, you'll get an idea of how to use both of these IDEs. But that in a nutshell is what I wanted to show you today. Post any comments, questions, concerns, and I will do my best to answer back to you. Thanks very much, guys. Have a good day. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. That was a quick way to start with Python and understand how to install it in your computer and how to get started. So I would say, so the next up is check out my free 18 module Beginners for Python, Mastering Python course, link in the description or look above right now. And that's all for today, guys. If you enjoyed this, please again consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.